LGBTQ rights are on the Supreme Court docket once again. This is the focus group.
It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
Bueller.
Laugh. And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is the focus group with Tim Bennett.
Staunch.
And John Nash.
Keep your clothes looking neat and clean.
We're all business. Except when we're not.
Welcome to the focus group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. Tim Bennett.
Got a donut.
Yeah, donuts in the studio, and we like them. I don't have a donut too often.
I don't either, and I love a donut.
And I do love it. Yes. And in fact, there are a couple of really good ones here in the city. One was at the Brooklyn donut thing. And remember one time we had someone bring in a whole range. We had to sample the donuts.
I do like a donut. I don't like a lot of cakey things like you like brownies and stuff. I don't like all that, but I do like a donut.
So I'm in the cakey category.
You like cakey.
Cakey.
I'm fluffy.
So there's the nicknames. Fluffy Bennett, Cakey Nash.
Cakey Nash, our drag queen names. Fluffy and Cakey.
We have Garrett and Steve in the booth bringing us to you with their highly technical skills. Guys, what do you think of Cakey and Fluffy? I'm all for Fluffy.
I don't think Fluffy's good for me. I don't think people would think I'm fluffy.
You're pretty fluffy.
The names don't really describe you guys, but just the name is great. Cakey and Fluffy.
Cakey and Fluffy.
I would go see that show not knowing what is going
Cakey and Fluffy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Ren and Stimpy or something,
got a hot
right?
ticket for Cakey
Garrett,
and
you have a
Fluffy.
very good ear for that kind of cultural thing. Cakey and Fluffy. He's right. Cakey and Fluffy could be a funny little...
We talked about it for 12 years. We've been on the show of doing an April Fool's show with special guests. We could have had Cakey and Fluffy do the show.
And then maybe Garrett could have wore his cosplay, that outfit. You remember that? What was it, the bear?
No, I don't. No.
Yeah,
you had
the penguin, was it? What was it you had on?
When the bear walked in the studio? I remember that, yeah, but that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
That
was Barry.
That was Barry. Friends of Cakey Fluffy. Yeah, okay.
Captain Kangaroo set.
Hey, focusgroupradio.com is our website, and if you go there, you'll find out all about us. All the shows are there, video and audio, and it lists all the platforms we're on. You could link through that, and you'll also learn about our partners and sponsors. Tim is a dog guy, right? And I'm a cat guy.
Yes.
Fluffy likes dogs. Cakey likes cats.
Fluffy's kind of a cat name, though.
Well, there we go. It's an oxymoron.
I'm not so sure
right?
Fluffy I'm sold on, but it sounds like Garrett's gave a sign of approval.
Tim has always told me that dogs are different because they like being around us. They want to
please.
They want to please. So I found something to kick off our little banter with. So leave it to the Japanese. Do the Japanese love cats?
Well, when they're little, the bones are soft. They taste good. Yeah.
Ooh. That's a total but-um-bum. I mean,
that's the Koreans.
Yeah, but you know that Lucky Kitty with the wave. The
Hello Kitty
is it Korean
with
the cat that waves? Yeah. So I think maybe the Japanese just love. I'm always assuming the Japanese love cats. So if your cat ignores you when you call its name, it's not because it doesn't recognize it. It's just because it doesn't feel like responding.
Oh, I saw this article. I was going to do this as a caught my eye.
Did you really?
Yeah.
All right. So the Japanese did research into the feline mind. It involved 78 cats who were each played recordings of people reading out 4 random nouns and then the kitty's name. Scientists found that the feline subjects generally responded to their name by pricking up their ears or moving their heads, but unlike dogs, didn't show any major signs of excitement, such as tail wagging or jumping up on a couch. Cats may not understand they're being personally addressed, reports the Smithsonian. They simply associate the sound of their names with a reward such as food or playtime. And while dogs want to please their owners, cats are not really as motivated. They're better at manipulating our behavior than vice versa. So I read this and I thought, this is such a perfect...
No, and it did have an awful lot of stats, which is why I didn't pick it, because I thought then it got awful little wonky about it. But they always do say cats are a bit more aloof.
Oh, yeah.
Than dogs. And the great thing about a cat, though, is you can leave a cat for a weekend with some food and it'll survive. Dogs can't be
until
really
the cat passes. And we probably will be repeating the story because I think we told it a few weeks ago, but we had a pet psychic on one time. And,
times.
Yeah, and she was great. The pet psychic was great. So she had us bring in pictures of our pets, and I brought in pictures of Kubla and Stella, deceased. And she goes, this one, Stella, Bob's cat, she goes, this one did not like being left alone for 2 or 3 days every week. And it started a few years ago, and she literally nailed when we bought the upstate house and we leave them in the city, because you could leave them with water and food for 2 or 3 days. That was creepy in a way.
Well, yeah, it was, and she did read, and a lot of what people think psychics do is just guessing, right? And they talk in generalities.
Yeah.
But some things I don't think you can, like, how would she know that you went away every weekend? That's
we purposely kept.
Yeah. And like she looked at my dogs and totally read their personalities as well, with pictures.
And also read the owner's personality about how they don't listen to you or they don't care.
Which I thought was important. Hey, before I forget.
Yes.
Next week, and it was just released yesterday, so you can buy it at Amazon.com, wherever you get your books at the bookstore. Drag is out by our friend Frank DeCaro from our days at Sirius XM on OutQ. And Frank's going to be our special guest next week and talk about his latest book, his new book, Drag. Combing through, can you read the
Coming through the big wigs of show business.
So Frank is, it's all over Facebook. It took him a couple years to write, and I'm excited to talk to him about it. And great coffee table book, and sales are doing well. He wants it to trend. So we got to get on and
I want you to take note of that little publishing mark in the lower right corner.
Lower right corner, Rizzoli?
Rizzoli.
Yeah.
Rizzoli is a really cool bookstore here in the city, and they are known for doing really nice, fun, or thoroughly researched coffee table books.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at this, and I know, we had Frank on, God, it was Christmas a couple years ago, was it maybe? And he talked about starting this, but I looked at it and I thought, wow, there's a lot of information here, a lot of great pictures. But we'll do that next week with Frank.
What Frank began that project a while ago.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
And what I think is fascinating, as RuPaul and a lot of that whole thing just gained momentum, he's going to be right. He's well positioned for trending. Let's put it that way.
Well, he has a story about how he got to write the book, and so we'll save that for when he visits.
All right, so he'll be next week,
Next week. He's our special guest.
Live. We could call in then. People could call and talk to Frank.
Yes, they can call in. I don't think Jim's coming with him this time. I think it's just Frank.
Just Frank. All right.
He's doing a gig, and he's doing a gig in the city, so he'll be East Coast bound shortly.
He's doing a comedy thing, you think, or?
Yeah, well, he'll tell us, but I know he's got some appointments here in the East Coast. I don't know if maybe he's doing a book tour.
And a lot of our listeners know us and Frank from OutQ.
Yep.
And I still get notes from people that miss the channel. They love finding us and listening to us and DNR, and obviously Frank was Frank 2 to 4 or 2 to 5?
No, Frank was 11 to 2.
11 to 2, right? And because Doria was on West Coast time, and that was like.
So it was Larry Flick and Keith Price. Then it was Doria and Frank. And then it used to be Michelangelo Signorelli, but then it was reruns of our show from the weekend, and they would rerun some other show.
They moved him over to Progress.
Right, and then it was DNR came on. Mm-hmm. And then Lance Bass, and then DNR. I always forget about Lance.
Yeah, well. I never really.
Saturday's lineup was great, quite frankly. It was Judy Gold, it was us, and then it was Dave Rubin and Ben Harvey, the six-pack.
The Ben and Dave six-pack.
It was a good Saturday morning.
What was it?
Oh, the days.
Judy's show was Hatched.
Two chicks.
Hatched by Two Chicks.
Yeah,
it was supposed to be a show about parenting, but
it didn't go. That went off the rails.
It rarely went to the parenting side of things, at least as I remember.
What I love most about Judy,
she was very frank.
We would walk in the studio and she'd be screaming and yelling into the mic and being frantic and panic, and then it would go off and she'd say, "Hey, how you guys
doing?" It went from 10 or 11.
Kinetic is like
down to 1.
Oh my God!
Hey,
I got to get home and pick up the kids, and I got to.
Or she'd be yelling and screaming into the mic, and then cut, and she'd get up and limp because she had foot surgery.
Yeah.
Remember, she had something, and she had her whole foot in a boot or a
commiserated
cast.
about her bad knees.
And she lived when I lived down on the Upper West Side, she lived in my neighborhood, and I would see her like a block away. "Hey, you!" And she'd scream at the top of her lungs, like, and all these heads are, because, "Hey, you, how you doing? I can't talk now. I got to pick up my kids, those rats."
She goes on every once in a while. She goes on the. I'll listen to the old platform, And I do like the Sandra Bernhardt show.
Yeah, I do like
Sandyland,
Sandy.
and she has Judy Gold on, and they actually have some good back and forth. They have good chemistry, and it's a fun show to listen to. One of the few things on that channel that you can listen to, in my opinion. But I'm in a car now. I got hit last week by...
Oh, this is a good one. I got a note from Tim. I hope your day is going better than mine. Send.
So I was sitting at a traffic
Tell
light.
people this story.
No, just sitting at a traffic light, and this young, unlicensed driver and her dad are out for a drive and rear-ended me and sideswipe me. And I'm like, So I pull over.
I don't think, no, your reaction wasn't,
I was on the phone with Marianne, actually, and I said, you're not going to believe it. Somebody just hit me. And she's like, oh, my God, hang up and take care of that or whatever. So cars are blowing their horns. Listen, I'm not moving so quick. I'm at the traffic light. Somebody just hit me. So she goes by me, the woman who hit me, the little girl and her father, and they pulled up quite a bit, almost like a quarter mile away. And I thought maybe it's hit and run. So
tell me that part. So
yeah,
you drive up
and then she's going to back into traffic. She didn't have her license. So the father comes running out, nice guy. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. My daughter, I thought he said my daughter's going to get her driver's permit or whatever. They've got these new driver's stickers all over the back of their car. And he looks at my car. He goes, hey, I'm sorry. This is just going to be a real inconvenience and real hassle. I said, yeah. So the car was drivable. I thought, well, do we call the police? All my friends afterwards said, you should, but I didn't. We just exchanged numbers. We took pictures of each other's plates and exchanged insurance information.
Could you just tell us why that police report would have been essential?
So when I...
Because I would have been totally cool with just exchanging numbers.
The guy was nice. He said, totally my fault. Here's my insurance information. I'll call my insurance company when we get to where we are. You call yours, whatever. So, and I wasn't thinking clearly, but I said, fine. So I get home, and of course, then Brian and Richard and everybody else, you should have got a police report. So I called the police department. I said I was hit over by Arcadia College on Easton Road, da-da-da. Well, how come you didn't call us? I said, because everybody was fine. I thought you had other things to do. No. Nope. You always call the police.
Really?
I said, okay. So
did they have to show up to...
And they have to show up and write a report. So I said, well, we didn't. I said, can I come file a report? Or can you take one online? No, you got to come get a piece of paper. I said, okay. So I go down to the police station. So I've got a bad knee. In my back, I'm limping. So I'm limping in the police station. Oh. And the cop says to me...
Was that because of the...
He said, you know what? I'm looking at you. You're all beat up. Why didn't you call the police? You got a bad...
all beat... Thanks, officer.
I said, I had back surgery and I've got a bad knee. I said, this isn't from the accident. Well, you never know. He said, and here's what's going to happen now. It's your word against his word. And since you now have to file this, and the state of Pennsylvania is so archaic, you're going to have to send this to Harrisburg, because you're going to have to fill this out, make a little diagram, tell us about where the cars are positioned, whatever, like a Judge Judy show, place everything. I said, okay.
These guys are the desk sergeant. Yeah. Very practiced.
Because then you're going to send it to Harrisburg. Here's the address. I said, you don't send it? No, I'm not doing anything. You got to fill it all out yourself. It goes to Harrisburg now. State takes over. He said, and then they'll file it with some insurance thing, and then if there happens to be a lawsuit or a problem, then there's something on record. But it doesn't really matter because you've only filled it out.
Not him. And it wasn't observed by the police, right?
He said, because he goes, now, one of my kids did this. You should have known better. My kid, he didn't do it. And guess what? The family all said they'd take care of it, and now they're all claiming, no, they won't, and that's not what happened, and there's no record of what happened. So that's why you have to do this. So meanwhile, then I get home. I call my insurance company. They're like, oh, if his insurance company is going to take care of it, don't worry about it. If they don't, call us and we'll file a claim. And to his word, he called me immediately, the guy, when I got home, are you okay? Everything's fine. I called my insurance company. They'll be reaching out to you shortly. 3 minutes later, his insurance company called USAA. They were great. Wanted to know all about how I was feeling, whether I was okay before the car. I'm sure they don't want a lawsuit.
Well, actually, no.
and then
I am starting to get a mild headache.
Said some collision company will be calling you and getting your car fixed. And I brought it in Monday, and it's going to be it's ready today. So we'll see.
You actually guessed. You and I was in Philly visiting Tim yesterday, doing a
offsite.
An offsite meeting because we landed an exciting new branding and marketing client, which we hope to talk about at some point. But it's been months of working and pitching and traveling and
dancing.
And then we finally had, I guess, our chemistry meeting recently. And that's an important stage. You have to, as Tim always says, you have to want to be able to go out to have a beer with these folks.
Yeah.
And the team that we're working with, I'd happily go out and have a beer with. They are a cool group of people. Or something. And it was right, I was just, you gamed it perfectly because I was talking to you and you said, I think they're going to do this, this, and this. And I think they did 2 of the 3 things. It was a side panel.
Yeah, the car.
It was the bumper was the one that was the question mark.
Yeah, but he looked at it. They had to replace a piece of trim and a couple other things. I mean, fortunately, she was going slow enough to get around me.
And how did they have? Here's my question about auto repair that always intrigues me. A lot of these, so it's a VW all-track wagon, right? And
Right.
So do they have a panel, a side body panel in stock? A. Is it pre-painted to the color of your car?
So what car companies do, if you look at it more closely, is that it's all the same. So the trim that they would have to replace on my car would be the same on yours, and probably pretty close to the trim on just a regular golf wagon.
It's just a piece
All that
of trim.
gray. It's all that
All gray. Okay.
So very rare it's going to be, unless you're in very, very high end, that you'd have the difference. And what they will do, what these collision shops will do, or third-party shops, is they will contact the dealer first to buy it, or they'll find it somewhere through a distributor. They might be able to go directly if VW had a distributor locally, the warehouse. And they'll get it, and usually get the parts within a couple hours to a day at the most.
What about
when I had my car fixed down in Rehoboth, they actually went over on the ferry to South Jersey to get the part.
It was closer than...
It was closer than going to Philly.
But what
or
about
DC.
the color then? So if the part is neutral gray, do they then get VW, whatever the white is for?
Well, no, yeah, they definitely have. There's paint codes. All the car companies use paint codes. Now, a lot of the paint's all the same color, just a different name. So whereas Volkswagen might call it aspen
Ross
white,
or
Subaru will
something,
call it snowy hue.
But it's white.
It's white. You know.
And the code is like house paint. This much black, this much whatever.
But on their trim, it's just gray is gray. That's how the piece is. There's no painting. There's no nothing. So I think they just snapped that on, and then they probably just buffed out whatever the scratch and the dent was, and either painted. I'll be curious to see.
Years ago, I went to pick up my. I had a Jetta wagon at the time, and it had I had a bike rack on the top, and the car gets pulled up, and I'm standing looking at the front of the car, and the roof is like dented. It looks like someone stood or they put a big weight and it just crumpled a little bit at the front. I called the attendant over and I said, "Look at this." Oh my God. And he goes, "Wow, what happened?" I photographed it. He said, "Look, it had to have happened here because we always look at the car when it comes in, when they park it." He gave me 3 pieces of paper. I had to fill them out. The garage took care of it. They since the car was parked there, they picked it up, took it away. I think it took 2 days. But when you picked it up, you would never know.
Really?
But that was a structural. I thought that was a kind of a hard fix if you're going to compress the roof a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of tricks of the trade, I guess, for companies that fix this stuff. I'm just glad it's fixed and it's done, but it was an inconvenience. But so where we were going with that is I'm in a car with terrestrial radio. They wanted to charge me $5 a day for Sirius, which is about what they charge you normally, right? So I'm listening to this horrible radio, and I was trying to find a station with just music or something, and there must have been 20 minutes of commercials on my way here or something. I just thought, God, it's great.
Just don't know.
I could not listen to regular radio.
It's not the same. Well, when we were growing up, it was very different. Anyway, I just looked at my watch. We're falling behind here. What caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
We can speed it up, John. Mine, my caught my eye is comes to us from northern England, and anybody who lives, I think, in a lot of parts of the country where you certainly have winters coming into spring, it's pothole season.
Oh.
Last year I blew 2 tires.
Yep.
Have you ever blown a tire?
Oh, yeah.
So the residents in this...
There's nothing you can do. The minute you hit that, you're.
So the locals in Teesside, which is a...
Oh, this is from the UK?
Place in the UK. There's been a string of potholes that for over a year have yet to be fixed. So the citizens were getting mad. I'm glad to see the Brits have the same infrastructure problem we do. We've dumped all our money into the war machine and fighting the Afghans, bombing them into the Stone Age, right? Can't fix a pothole. So what these people did in this town is they went to the potholes, this one artist called the Power of the Willie, and he started painting huge male penises around the potholes.
The outline
of penis. So This way, he says, the drivers, and it's all done with non-staining chalk or whatever, so it'll wash away when it rains. He said people will tend to see this easier and better, as you said, than they would a pothole. So rather than the pothole coming upon you and getting scared, you'll see these penises and dodge them, and you won't hit them. So
I don't know what's funnier. Your reading habits and how you would have found this article, or the article itself. Where'd this come from?
This came from I got it out of some UK paper that I was reading. I don't have the source.
Guardian,
on the top.
maybe.
I did go to their website to check it out to make sure it's true. It's the Middlesbrough. It's not borough. Middlesbrough Council in Yorkshire, England, northern England, and it's in the community of Teesside. And so now everybody in this northern part of England is drawing penises around things, and the town doesn't find it funny.
Well, they never do.
And,
I think it's hysterical, personally, but...
They said this isn't the first incident that they've seen artwork based on male genitalia attacking pothole issues. There was also an artist called Wanksy, similar to Banksy. And he would use it to help people find potholes so they would not wreck their vehicles and cause accidents or injure cyclists and be a danger to pedestrians. And they said if the town's not going to do anything about this, that we're going to at least make light of it and draw attention to it. He said because the townspeople and the council don't want to see this on the streets, particularly for tourists. So he said the potholes usually get fixed within a week once they put the penis around it.
This was the payoff I was waiting for. Like, does the act of doing that get results? The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
There's a big one in my neighborhood, so watch out. I think I'm going to do one. But
make sure you do one like you're showing on the screen. If you happen to be watching on video, Tim's showing a picture of like someone took black chalk and outlined it, and they did like a kind of Keith Haring thing. So they put little hair marks on the testicles to.
He says they're turning dangerous potholes into temporary works of art. The council obviously is not happy. We do it with non-permanent chalk baseline markers, just like you would do if you were doing a repair or something. And they said it's not offensive. It's done by qualified artists. The naked body is commonplace in art, and these drawings are not cartoons. They're not photographs. It's just a simple little drawing.
It's done by a qualified artist. Any one of us in this studio today, from booth to desk, we're qualified to draw that. I could draw that.
So I hope they come to Philly, or I think I'm going to start doing this in Philly. I get so aggravated about the amount of potholes this time of year, and people just don't seem to...
I'm amazed when we hit one sometimes. I'm expecting broken axle. Yeah. That's actually tires. You're lucky if you do a tire. But you hit one of these things the wrong way, you can break an axle.
Well, when the Brits started complaining, we say the same thing here. We pay, particularly if you're in the Northeast, we pay a lot of toll money. We pay a lot in gas taxes. You pay to register a car. You pay tax when you buy a car. There's always something. There's to register your car, your license. I pay enough tax that you can maintain the road.
Yeah.
I'm going to run for office. What caught your eye?
You could run on just, Tim Gunn caught my eye, and it's the only reason this caught my eye was because it is, in fact, Tim Gunn. And we had one of our favorite guests from when we were over on Sirius was, in fact, Tim Gunn. He came to play. He had a great time. He actually did Tim's list. He was Tim doing Tim's list.
Now, he has a new show on, right?
It will be on Amazon Prime. He and Heidi Klum.
Isn't he doing, or he's not doing the new Project Runway?
And I watched a little bit of the new one.
I haven't watched it. Is it any good? Or?
To me, it was Heidi, it was Tim, it was the whole crew.
Michael Kors and Nina Garcia.
And I have no interest in the new one because I liked him and I liked her. So BuzzFeed, this is a really short caught my eye, but BuzzFeed did a series of pictures, and the headline reads, Tim Gunn trashed Marie Kondo, and I kind of love it. Now, Marie Kondo's that woman that does, if it doesn't give you joy, throw it out. She's like the downsizing woman. So I'll just read it. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Finally, someone is speaking up for the hoarders out there. Tim Gunn says, quote, I've never said this publicly. I have been asked twice to conduct an interview with Marie Kondo, and I have twice declined. I am not a believer. I just don't subscribe to her methods. This whole business of sparking joy. I have a huge number of books. Do they all spark joy? Roget's Thesaurus does not spark joy. Am I going to get rid of it? No. A dictionary does not spark joy, right? And then someone put in here, sip, sip. Like as if he's taking a... Tim said the show was very... The Marie Kondo show was very slow. I watched 3 minutes of the first episode and thought, I can't take this anymore. But then friends and colleagues said, you should really try it. It's actually a good show. So I thought, I'm going to watch the episode with the two gay guys. Each is a writer. They have a ton of books, and they want help getting rid of the books. It took me 4 or 5 sessions to get through that episode. These are not long shows.
Oh, my God.
I can only take so much of her, ! And then he said, I learned nothing, in caps, that helped me with this whole process. But I did learn this. At one point when she's arriving in the morning and they act like they've never seen each other before, even after she's been there for 11 days, it's day 11. I would have thrown myself on my sword if Marie Kondo was coming to my apartment. It was day 11 of this. Let's speed it up, people, which is very much like you doing the let's speed it up, people.
What is? I didn't even know she had a show.
It's on Netflix. Yeah.
This isn't the Japanese woman.
Yes, it is, and she's got this whole downsizing thing.
Yeah, it's horrible. I tried. Did you watch the show?
It sparked. Yeah, well, the show was painful. We started. I put it on my list. We watched part of one episode.
Did you see the one where the people let all the Christmas shit out year round?
No.
So
you know what I'm.
They have a raised ranch, and so they come in, and the house is full of junk. But as you go down kind of the steps, like typical, like into their playroom or TV room, it's all Christmas. They've never put it away. And she's got it all down there. And I thought, woof, there's a bigger issue here than does it bring you joy or not. Right? If you're watching TV amongst Santa Claus in July.
Little Mrs. Claus doing her thing. Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it was a painful show. I agree with Tim Gunn.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because it's Tim Gunn, right?
Now, here's our business birthday, John.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So happy birthday to the father of modern advertising. I should have known this guy, and I don't. Albert Davis Lasker. Born May 1st, 1880, died May 30th, 1952 at 72 years old, was an American businessman who played a major role in shaping modern advertising. Did you know him?
No. In fact, when you think about the giants of the industry, I think of like Ogilvy, like, some of the names of the agencies are named after the people that invented it. But he's credited with
a lot. Wait to hear what he's credited with. So he started out as a newspaper reporter as a teenager, didn't necessarily like it. So his father got him a gig working for an ad agency in Chicago called Lord & Thomas. And he worked there for a little while, and he hired a friend named Eugene Katz, and they wrote copy together for a series of ads for Wilson Eardrum Company. And
Wilson Eardrum?
Eardrum Company. It was called.
Was that
Wilson,
like a trumpet, like the?
Well, it was.
Was it a hearing aid? Okay.
And he said they featured a photograph of a man cupping his ear. George Wilson, president of the Eardrum Company, adopted the ads, and sales had increased. This was 1903. So they started buying a little bit into the firm. And he devised a copywriting technique that appealed directly to psychology of the consumer. For instance, he said women seldom smoked cigarettes then. But in order to sell Lucky Strike cigarettes, he came up with a copy idea that smoking them will make you slender.
Next, you're going to tell me he was the one who came up with Doctors Certify cigarettes.
So he said that, Lucky Strikes, of course, were a popular brand at that time, and in order to get women to smoke, he thought, how am I going to get women to smoke? I'm going to tell them cigarettes make you slender. And so the copy, it was all about great copy, he said. And he said, what people didn't understand, that advertising is really salesmanship and print. So he said that he also used radio for the first time, particularly in campaigns for Palmolive soap, Pepsodent toothpaste, and Kotex products. Interesting with Kotex, it's the reason why we had sex education in school. He got Kotex to talk about menstruation and puberty, and Kotex sponsored in all the public schools. They sold a ton of Kotex.
Wow. All right. So
he also used the concept in the 1900 washer company, later known as Whirlpool. He talked about how successful it was with clean clothes and how that made you feel and how you would feel good about having clean clothes. The advertiser spend went from $15,000 a year to $30,000 a month. He became one of the top agencies in the nation. He also, this is my favorite one, he helped create orange juice. So I never knew this. So California, Florida, for years, people only ate oranges. Nobody ever drank orange juice. So the growers...
Our entire adult life, there's been orange juice. So what...
So in 1908, he picked up the campaign for sun-kissed growers, and they were
Sell oranges
because they could not sell oranges. They had all this overpopulation of trees, and so they were actually cutting trees down and throwing away oranges and not selling the crop. People couldn't eat enough oranges. We had way too many oranges. So he came up with an idea of why not drink the juice? Because making juice would require 2 to 3 times the amount of oranges, and so they wouldn't have to be cutting down the trees.
They could use the excess crop.
So what he ended up doing was he took, and I've got to get this right. This was in 1900. Said nobody drank orange juice. Recommending a cold glass of orange juice in the morning would be like offering somebody a tablespoon of mustard with your coffee. So he decided he had to create a habit. So he decided, why not drink the juice? So he caught wind of this. They were chopping trees down or whatever. So he came up with a juice extractor. So his ad agency manufactured an orange juice extractor and sold it to the public for 10 cents along with a bundle of oranges. So the
famous cone thing that we know
now
today.
Nobody can think twice about
Orange
oranges.
juice.
And he said, all good success with product. And I thought about you with this. He said, there's only 3 things you need to do for successful. Only 3 things. Advertising. He said, create a habit. Orange juice. Add products to the process. They give the example even now with iPhone and the earbuds. And then it's all around good copy. You have to have good copy. If you don't have good copy or a good tagline or good slang, nobody wants to read it. And so he's, it goes on and on of things that this guy did. He invented the soap opera. He also...
Let's just hit the pause button on that one. He invented the soap opera?
He's the creator of the soap opera genre by using radio and television as media driven by advertising for the dramas. He also owned the Chicago Cubs, Wrigley Field.
Oh, my God. All that advertising. Yeah, Wrigley Field.
So it goes on and on. He... quite a success, and there's some great books written about him. He also worked for the government. He also got Harding elected president and talked about what he did with political campaigns. But his whole thing was about the importance of good copy. He was 30 years as chief executive at the agency. Later, it became Foote, Cone and Belding, which you know, in 1942. He died in 1952 in New York City, a very wealthy man, but gave a lot of his money to philanthropy. So I'd like to know more about Albert Davis Lasker.
What was there's a thing that used to happen. This thing that people used to talk about. This thing like if you could have lunch with anybody, right? And often people would pick these like Abe Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson. I'm just pulling names out of a hat, but they were big historical names. I'd want to have lunch with that guy. Right?
Because his thought process, he said, before he got involved in advertising and good copy, people just sold space.
Yeah.
He said, but advertising is really about what's inside the space you're selling.
And the promise you're selling.
Right. So he looked about that, and he said he felt it was just intuitive and very simple, but before him, it was not a thing. Now, of course, of course. But to invent orange juice, brilliant, right?
Well, he invented the product, created the need, created the habit, and then wrote the copy. And so, I agree with you. And we were just talking about this all day long on our
habit.
Well, for the new client, but all day long on our off-site, we were talking about copy, and how if we nail that with our copywriters,
everything else will come along.
All click into place.
Yep.
All right, many of you know that Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the Focus Group. And thanks to our listeners, Chris and his husband, Todd.
You said they're from Rehoboth, or they go to Rehoboth? I'll have to look
they're
for
Virginia
them.
Beach, and they go to Rehoboth.
Maybe I'll see them at the Pines or Rockaway or something.
They sent us this fabulous shark puppet. And then Bob suggested that I buy this sleeve, which I think because I'm wearing blue, it's not doing its job as well. But it's time for the Deep Discount read, folks.
Oh, my God.
Head on over to focusgroupradio.com. Click on me, the shark.
Why does the shark sound like a pirate? I think it needs a different voice.
Now the routine is off the track, mateys, because Tim's thrown a grenade under the bus. So, let me get my notes, Tim, and tell you what the sale is. Oh, it's under 10 in budget. That means I dive deep and I pull up savings.
This might be worse than some bad, what's that TV that
Mystery Science
All Access TV or whatever they
or
call
it's
that.
like Mystery Science Theater 3000 where the puppets are sitting at the bottom of the
2 o'clock
show.
in the evening, everybody's stoned and drunk watching the show.
Yeah, I could just do like if when Tim talks, I'll move the mouth.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll tell you what I picked. So it's the under $10 sale. Own your passion at deep discount. And you can do that, by the way, if you go to focusgroupradio.com and click on the deep discount.
Look,
logo.
it's like Jaws. Bum bum.
Oh, I like that.
Bum bum bum. Thank you, Chris and Todd.
So I picked for 69% off for $8.99. You're not going to see this anywhere, people. The Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts. Do you ever watch the Celebrity Roasts? Nash? He's in puppet mode. So apparently,
I'm imitating you. See?
These were a fixture on NBC's TV Thursday night lineup from 73 to 84. I didn't realize they ran that long. But essentially, they were a spoof on and patterned after the roast that used to be held at the New York's Friars Club. And essentially, it's a bunch of celebrities get together and they roast and tease and fun on each other. People like Johnny Carson, Bob Hope, Foster Brooks, George Burns, Janet Leigh, Red Fox, Tony Randall, Mickey Rooney, Orson Welles. I don't think you could do that anymore. Are there comedians around?
Sorry. I love your pick. I used to love watching the D. Martin roast. And when you do a roast nowadays,
I don't think you do it.
no, they've done a couple, and
Do they fall flat?
no, they don't necessarily fall flat. But the last, what was the one I was reading about? They roasted somebody, and they got really angry. Like they sat and they did their.
Didn't realize it was fun?
Oh no! They knew it was all in fun, but they thought that all the comedians that came and did the roast went a little too far. But see, with the Dean Martin thing, there was no such thing as too far. You just did your thing, right?
They laughed. And you know what? They also knew each other, and you always felt like they genuinely liked each other.
Yeah.
So you knew it was good fun. It would be like if you and I did one, and we went back and forth, and we know what we could pick on about each other and laugh about it. Like when you pick on my music, you got that damn thing going. I'm going to kill the shark.
Sharky says. So
What'd you pick?
John picked in the voice of the pirate. Today, the shark will be voiced by a pirate. I picked The Affairs of Dobie Gillis on DVD. It's a movie from...
See, I thought it was a sitcom.
It's a movie. And the reason I picked it is because it's a well-known work of this particular guy, which everybody's been talking about this TV show. Fosse and Vernon.
Have him bite the mic.
Dun 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 dun.
I thought Dobie Gillis was a thing with that guy.
There might have actually been a TV show later,
Wasn't he the guy that was on Gilligan's Island? What was his name?
Oh, you're talking about no
Gilligan.
I know who you're talking about. This starred Bobby Van and Debbie Reynolds, and it also starred Bob Fosse, who this is either right before or after he had a breakthrough with the Pajama Games. He did the stage version of Pajama Game and did the choreography. But you're going to like this description. All I do is dream of you. Not a bad preoccupation for singing lovebirds Dobie, Bobby Van, and Pansy, P-A-N-C-Y, Pansy, Debbie Reynolds. But they may want to add some to their cranial cogitations. Like dour Professor Pomfret's English class, we know a pomfret is a French fry, and chemistry of the test tube and Bunsen burner kind, Dobie and Pansy are students at Grain Belt U, where the motto is learn, 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 work, work, work.
Sounds like a Russian university.
Sounds like a... Is deep discount available in the USSR? So I picked The Affairs of Dobie Gillis merely because it's a well-known Bob Fosse vehicle, and if you're into the new show that's on FX, and I know
watch that.
I know our friend Lauren out at Deep Discount also likes Fosse and Vernon. You can check it out. So there you go.
Perfect. And the new release this week is My Brilliant Career on Blu-ray. And I didn't know much about this or heard about it. Did you know much about this movie?
I only knew that Sam Neill was in it, and many of you may remember Sam Neill played the paleontologist or the dinosaur scientist in most of the Jurassic Park movies. Yeah.
Which I like him. But I do know, John and I often talk about this, it comes from the Criterion Collection on Blu-ray, so we know it has the great seal of approval and it'll be well done and well worth a watch.
And one of Australia's first female directors, or well-known female directors, Gillian May Armstrong. She was born in 1950. This is one of her. Criterion picked this film because it's a very good example of her directing style, and it's a very Australian movie. So I think it looks good.
Perfect. And it sounds like it's also great if you. Her films often feature female perspectives and protagonists. So be sure to pick up the new release, My Brilliant Career. Head over to focusgroupradio.com. Click on the deep discount logo. Own your passion. It's the under $10 budget sale. I picked the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast. John picked The Affair of Dobie Gillis. And the new release is My Brilliant Career. What do we have to say, Garrett?
Thanks, Deep Discount.
So stay with us. We'll be right back. And when we return, we've got a shop talk. And we're going to dive into a little bit about what the Supreme Court's going to tackle in the next term about, I guess, the Civil Rights Act.
It is the, yes, it's just about discrimination. Yeah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with The Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is all you need to know about us, and you'll find everything out about the show and the platforms we're on at our website. And thanks for tolerating Sharky the puppet, and I want to thank our listeners for sending that. There is another puppet, too, by the way.
There is? Is it a shark?
I think it's like a beluga whale or something. It looks sharkish, but Bob thought it was some kind of a porpoise or something. But
is it a Russian spy?
But I do have another green sleeve, and Tim, right when we went to break, Tim said, he goes, I got a crossover idea. So there may be the dueling puppets in the future, but you got to love people who...
Cakey and fluffy.
And here's one for you. The guys that sent us the puppets primarily listen to the show on audio.
Really?
Yeah, so in fact, they sent it along.
That's even funnier.
So they're audio fans. So as Tim said before we went to break, in the news about a week ago, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear 3 cases that are involving Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They are all cases where 2 of them where individuals were let go because they are gay or LGBT. In one case, the plaintiff won. In one case, the company that fired the individual won. And that's the kind of case the Supreme Court usually takes. When the district court, like it was Circuit Court 11, and then maybe I think it was the Ninth Circuit or the 2nd or the 11th, when you have that kind of discrepancy in judicial practice, that's where the Supreme Court usually steps in to clarify an issue. And the third case was someone being fired because they were transitioning on the job, and that one's the most fascinating of the 3 cases.
That's the funeral home one?
That's the funeral home one, yeah. So when they announced that these 3 cases were going to be on the docket, likely the hearings will be in November of this year, and they'll probably give them about an hour of questioning time in front of the Supreme Court. Many journalists who are court watchers on the progressive side went into a judgment mode. For example, the author of this piece, who I want to tell you her name because she's actually like a Pulitzer Prize winner, Linda Greenhouse. She said, I was surprised to see predictions of doom being offered by progressive court watchers. The absolute worst-case scenario, Ian Millhiser warned on Think Progress, the cases could demolish sex discrimination law as we know it, Mark Joseph Stern wrote on Slate. These are the headlines I actually did read. When the Supreme Court took these cases, I thought, here we go, with the Gorsuch, with the, Kavanaugh, like we have a conservative tilt. It's going to definitely take us in an interesting direction. But her whole article, and it's a bit wonky, it all comes down to language, right? I mean, I don't want to say it quite like that, but how they phrase the questions, what they want the court to decide. And her opinion is that it might not be what we all think. They might actually come out.
Right, and they gave an example of Justice Souter back, who was nominated by Bush, or put on the court by Bush. Conservative, and they thought that there was a challenge to Roe v. Wade, and they thought for sure, immediately it was like, oh my God, we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they said no. We want to make sure that the question we answer is in line with not going too far. And the Supreme Court, I guess, does this a lot without going they try not to get ahead of what they call
the society
culture
curve,
or whatever.
Culture.
My big question after I read this, because I was also like you, bewildered and fascinated, I guess, about this change of language in question. Because as I read it, one thing I hate about attorneys, I was so confused. Right, I'm thinking, okay, it's just one word's going to change.
I read this 3 times. This whole article. Did you?
But what I thought about, and you remember Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg were best of friends. Yep. And they both had a love for opera. They both loved their families. They did holidays together. Older Jewish woman, Catholic Italian, agreed on nothing.
Conservative, yeah.
Right, agreed on nothing. And I wondered if personally when they're together or privately, I guess is the better word, I wonder if they try to understand each other's point of view or have a discussion before they get in front of these arguments to say, I wonder if there was a time where Justice Ginsburg might have been able to soften Scalia or vice versa. Scalia might have said, you can't push this too far, Ruth.
True. ...
And I wondered about that because it sounded like before anything gets to the stage where you talked about doing the 1 hour of questions, that they've already in their minds decided how the question was going to be answered.
Well, that's what she said.
Right.
And Tim sets this up perfectly. Apparently, the court's been considering these 3 cases for no less than several months now. Apparently, every month or X number of weeks, they take up a committee discussion about what cases are going to make it to the docket. These 3 were she said they were relisted. That means they weren't decided, they were put on the next meeting, put on the next meeting. But she feels in her reading of this that they were looking for the one case where they could actually apply or phrase the question that they were going to answer for the two lower circuit courts in such a way that they could thread the needle, like Tim said. You don't want to be too far ahead of the curve. And then she distilled it down to this. Here's the single question that the justices have chosen to answer based on 2 of these. Whether Title VII prohibits discrimination against transgender people based on 1, their status as transgender, or 2, sex stereotyping under Waterhouse versus Hopkins. So Waterhouse versus Hopkins was a previously decided case that was also created precedent for Title VII, and it was about sex discrimination. And so she then decides to dissect these different things, and she comes out on the net side, and it's a long article, by the way, that we may be surprised by what the justices render.
Well, because they talk about, and again, without getting wonky, about what does the Title VII about and the civil rights of being, does sexual orientation and being transgender, identifying as transgender, fall under just the topic of sex?
Correct.
So,
and that's in fact so.
So how do you define?
Yeah.
I can't discriminate against anybody based on sex, but then you have to start reading in mind. Well, does sex mean just male female? Does sex mean how you're born? And that's everything.
It's literally I guess so. So the 2 questions that the lower courts kicked up were 1, whether the word sex in Title VII's prohibition on discrimination because of sex meant gender identity and included transgender status when Congress enacted this in '64, right? So we're talking, they had no idea about some of this stuff. And the second question was whether Waterhouse versus Hopkins, a previously decided case, prohibits employers from applying sex-specific policies according to their employees' sex rather than their gender identity. So how does this play out? So she said the group's second question, which was the employee's sex rather than their gender identity, is a bit, the group's second question requires a bit more explanation. So this guy, Anthony Stevens, who was the plaintiff in this case, worked at a funeral home. He decided to transition to female, and part of his transition involved dressing and appearing as a woman, which apparently broke the
dress
code of the funeral home. Right. And the owner later testified that he fired Anthony Stevens because he was no longer going to represent himself as a man. He wanted to dress as a woman. And that's the basis for his lawsuit against them. So she's saying that the Supreme Court may actually narrowly say sex, if I'm getting this right, doesn't apply, so the narrow definition of male-female gender roles, they've already expanded that to sexual discrimination can be a woman discriminating against another woman, a man discriminating against a man, right? It didn't have to be opposite sex discrimination. So they've already set that precedent. And she thinks that's what's going to happen here is they are going to hold that precedent and decide that when the law was written in 1964, that sex applied to not only the gender, but also probably orientation and representation.
Right, because so in 89 there was a Price Waterhouse versus Hopkins ruling, and they essentially said the 1989 decision expanded the concept of discrimination to hold that an employer who penalizes an employee who doesn't conform to a stereotypical idea of the proper appearance of behavior for the person's gender can be found to violate Title VII. So that's where they think that the justices may fall on the side of being pro-LGBT and transgender, because it's going to fall under the fact that you don't conform to stereotypical norms, and that's considered discrimination.
Now, you just said something that made me catch my breath. I'm not sure that when they give their ruling, they're going to be pro or con. No. It's literally an interpretation of statute, right? So she ends the article by saying, don't listen to me about her theory. She said, just ask Judge Jose Cabranes of the Second Circuit, one of judiciary's most prominent conservatives and a judge whose opinions get the attention of conservatives on the Supreme Court. In the Second Circuit sexual orientation case, he concurred with the majority in finding that the plaintiff, Donald Zarda, now this is a gentleman that was fired from a skydiving company because he was gay, had a valid Title VII claim. And he says, quote, "This is a straightforward case of statutory construction." It's all about language. Yeah. And Judge Cabranes wrote, "Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination because of sex," in quotes. Zarda's sexual orientation is a function of his sex. Discrimination against Zarda because of his sexual orientation, therefore, is discrimination because of his sex and is prohibited by Title VII. So see how they do this parsing and parsing and sorting. It's fascinating.
So I agree. So the gist of the article was hold your horses.
Fluffy got it down to. Right. Keiki says, Keiki's really wordy.
As I read that, I thought, okay, you're parsing language. I get it all. I understand. That's what attorneys, everybody does. It's important. But then I started thinking about the Second Amendment and thinking, can we take the leap to say that when the right to bear arms is different with muskets than it is AK-47s? We can't seem to get that right.
Hey, look, you're
right to bear arms. Can I have a rocket launcher? Could I have a
Scud missile?
Let's interpret that.
No,
Anyway.
No, but that's the whole thing, isn't it?
Language, right? The right to bear arms means any arm, what
now, and then you get into this. Now, hey, folks, we don't mean to be too wonky here, but so this LGBT rights case or employment issue centers around an act of Congress, a statute, right? The 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VII. Your example gets people up in arms because it floats around the Constitution. Yeah. And then it comes down to this whole, like Scalia was a big fan of originalism, right? So what did they mean when they framed it? Well, if you really followed his...
It meant muskets. It didn't mean AK-47.
So there you go. If you follow the logic train and you're going to be a constructionist and an originalist, then the weapons at the time were load, put the ball in, pack the powder. It takes like 10 minutes to fire, Yeah. Hey, you saw that thing, just
hypocrisy
on the guns thing. You saw that whole kerfuffle with the NRA. I had no idea.
I didn't pay attention to what was going on.
Oliver North is like the president of the NRA.
He is.
Wayne LaPierre is like the chairman or something. He's the face of it.
He's creepy.
There was something going on behind the scenes where North was trying to edge LaPierre out, and he threatened to divulge damaging financial information about the organization.
But that the Russians funded a lot of the Republicans
through the NRA.
Yeah, that's what happened, people.
Wait.
Turn off Fox.
Did we decide it was Fluffy and Keiki, right?
Fluffy and Keiki.
So Fluffy's on a soapbox now, man. You could wear like a cat suit, and if you
maybe a fur coat, I can get from one of the millennials.
Yeah, if you wear like something like that and you talk politics, it totally
Fluffy.
It throws people
Fluffy
off.
and Keiki. We're gonna do a Fluffy Keiki political hour.
Because Fluffy can be against an AK-47, and who wants to Fluffy?
Listen to Fluffy.
Fluffy says you can't do that. Keiki says, go read a book.
I think Keiki's got more of an edge, maybe. Or he thinks he does, maybe, and I don't know if that's going to fit Fluffy Keiki.
Keiki and Fluffy. Fluffy,
hey.
I think Garrett is in my camp on this one. I think Fluffy could stick.
I know. Fluffy could. I don't like it.
You came, and here's the worst part of it, folks. Nicknames are usually given by someone else. When you invent your own...
I just ran my mouth, which is what I tend to do. I think my mom and dad are watching. If you're watching, I hope my dad's feeling better. You know, he had thyroid surgery.
And you said he was a great patient.
Great patient.
And you went with him...
Oh, he was wondering why I had to take his underwear off. He thought that they wanted to look at his penis. But I just like,
hello, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett.
Dad, you got to take your underwear off. Anyway,
Yale
New Haven Hospital, one of the best hospitals I've been to. Clean, you could eat off the floor. People were great.
All right, see how Tim went to clean. So Tim takes his dad to the hospital like 4 a.m.
Yeah, well, we got up at 4. Yeah,
we got up at 4. You had to be there at 5. I sent Tim a note and I said, I hope your dad's doing good. One of the first things back was, boy, that was the cleanest hospital I've ever been.
It was really.
It wasn't like your dad's.
Great people. I mean, Dad's fine. So hey, thanks for joining us today. Be sure to next week, as we mentioned, we've got just released this week, yesterday actually, Drag, Frank DeCaro's new book, combing through the big wigs of show business. Frank joins us next week live here, so please join us and give Frank a call. Pick up his book wherever you buy your reading material from. Thanks to Garrett. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to John. Thanks to our friends at Deep Discount. It was the under $10 sale. I picked the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast. John picked The Affairs of Dobie Gillis, and the new release is My Brilliant Career on Blu-ray. Hope everyone has a good week, and we'll see you. Oh, no. Don't text and drive. Arrive alive.
I get my mouth.
Gotta look.
Get my mouth shut this
Gotta
time.
look.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.